my name is Holly Munro and I'm here to present my PBR report. So at the end of last year, when writing our PBR literature reviews and research proposals, I identified a weakness in my teaching that I wanted to address. How can I effectively use ICT and bring my classroom into the 21st century? So the 21st century classroom is a popular education term used throughout this report. So after YouTubing 21st century classrooms, I recognised that I'd never encountered a classroom, the purposeful ICT that was used to engage students in their learning, nor had I experienced or demonstrated my own teaching that would fit into this 21st century teaching category. As I began to research, I noticed another popular education theory within the 21st century classroom term, the flipped classroom model. So if you look up on the screen, the flipped classroom model is a bid to maximise in-class time. So teachers would video instructions of new concepts and encourage students to access the instructions prior to in-class teaching so that teaching and learning is focused on more the application of concepts rather than the delivery of material. While the flipped classroom model is primarily used in secondary and tertiary classrooms, as a primary teacher in a prac classroom with Year 5-6 students, I wanted to discover if aspects of the flipped classroom model can be transferred to different age groups with a focus on does students' engagement in learning and ICT skills develop when using the flipped classroom model. With my research topic in place, to ensure the study was fair, ethical, upheld the school values, and purposeful to the education of students, meetings with the principal and mentor teachers were arranged to approve the study and assess any necessary changes. The flipped classroom model suggests that students view videoed material before coming to class. Using this traditional model, I initially planned to video my instructions to enable myself to work with a group of students while another group of students watched the video and began working on the prescribed tasks. However, discussions with my mentor teacher about students' lack of ICT experiences in the classroom and students' very basic understanding of simple ICT skills highlighted the need for my initial research proposal to focus more on the gap of students' ICT skill set. Yes, I could have stuck with my initial research proposal, but as a reflective teacher of student needs, I chose to adapt the proposal. While I did incorporate the more traditional flipped classroom model by videoing my instructions for 2 lessons, for the purpose of the study and student learning, the flipped classroom model was appropriately adapted to promote student engagement through focused ICT skill development. So in keeping with the flipped classroom model, student engagement and ICT skill development was promoted through using Padlet. You may be thinking, Padlet. What is Padlet? So Padlet is a secure online dashboard that administrators such as teachers can post study-related links, videos, pictures, articles and documents for students to access. So throughout the week, I would post interesting links that I had found or students found and specific links that would be used during in-class teaching time. So as you can see up here, I've got many different links. Some of these the students recommended for me to put up. And for example, this one over here we used in our in-class teaching time, and so that was put up at closer to the lesson time. So to make Padlet fair for those that could not access Padlet at home, I would not post specific teaching links until the morning of the lesson, like I just mentioned, and students were given designated time during the lesson to navigate through the links on Padlet. The study took into account any assumptions and limitations of participants. So assumptions and limitations were gathered from discussions with my mentor teacher and with students. So I'm going to outline some of the assumptions and limitations to the study and also provide evidence of how they were addressed. On the screen here you can see the following list. So the first one, adequate technology was available for all students. So unfortunately, this was not the case. Not all the laptops held their battery charge. So battery charging stations were set up around the room for those needing to recharge their laptops during the lesson. Number 2, students had more than a basic understanding of ICT. As I previously explained, I thought that students would have more ICT skills. So discussions with my mentor teacher and evidence of students' work showed that they only had basic word program skills, and were below previously assumed skills. So the study was altered in order to improve students' ICT capabilities as outlined in the Australian National Curriculum. Number 3, students had access and permission to use the internet at home. So not all students had internet, nor had permission to use internet at home. So to address this issue, designated time was given during classroom time to look through Padlet and look through those links. Number 4, students were able to use ICT independently and demonstrate problem-solving strategies. Some students had very little ICT awareness and needed more one-on-one time during class to address simple ICT skills. Number 5, awareness of online safety. Yes, I was really pleased that students did have a good understanding of online safety, but they did need to be reminded about that their emails were not for personal use, their emails and login details should always remain confidential, and that their computer use could be tracked if there was an issue. And finally, all students' learning abilities are at the same level. This is a horrible assumption to make as a teacher, and so to combat this, the learning ability, students with difficulty in learning received the same Padlet links, however the tasks were adapted to suit their needs. Reflecting on and appropriately addressing the assumptions and limitations enabled the study to be fair and ethical for all students. So what did we find in this research topic? Well, evidence of student engagement was collected from 31 Year 5-6 students through qualitative and quantitative research methods. Qualitative data was collected from tallied observations. Tallied observations were recorded over 3 traditional lessons and 3 flipped classroom lessons using Padlet over 45-minute lesson periods. The tallied observations were a recording of students' on-task behaviour and engagement in learning. Quantitative data was collected from student surveys completed online using SurveyMonkey. Survey data was collected at the conclusion of 3 flipped classroom lessons, picked at random. As you can see up on the screen that I'm going to put up, results from the tallied observations saw student on-task behaviour similar in both traditional and flipped classroom lessons. However, student enthusiasm and engagement in learning outside of the classroom significantly increased through the flipped classroom model, and in particular by using Padlet. So tallied results did show there were students who showed off-task behaviour during the flipped classroom lesson. However, after talking with the students demonstrating off-task behaviour, it was understood they were discussing their learning with their peers. So student surveys from SurveyMonkey showed that the majority of the class felt more engaged in their learning with the use of ICT and identified Padlet as a useful learning tool while at home, as you can see in this graph here. Conversations with students and parents and assessment tasks further supported that effective use of ICT can increase student engagement in their learning and ICT skill development. So even though students were not expected to access Padlet prior to class, I was able to access data from Padlet showing that most of the students were choosing to log on to Padlet more than once throughout the week. Students were also choosing to email me links about the topics to share with the rest of the class via Padlet. So what does this mean for future teaching? So from this study, it is recommended that the following points are considered for best practice of ICT skill development and the flipped classroom model. So starting with the first one, to implement strict guidelines for safe practices while on the internet and ICT tools. Like any new skill, it is essential to provide opportunities for students to practice their ICT skills and to learn new routines of teaching with ICT, in particular the flipped classroom model. Number 3, I would recommend a period of no shorter than 6 weeks to implement a new teaching strategy effectively to students. Number 4, for best practice, as outlined in the ATSL professional standards, practitioners must continue to reflect on how the incorporation of the flipped classroom model and ICT is enhancing student learning and engagement, and therefore must alter the flipped classroom model, as I had to, and any teaching strategies to suit the needs of all students. And last one, to provide appropriate ICT devices for student learning, ensuring that devices are reliable and organised for learning. So in conclusion, evidence supports that ICT and the flipped classroom model is effective in increasing student engagement in their learning and develops ICT skills of Year 5-6 students. For me, the study has highlighted the importance in reflective teaching by addressing student needs, demonstrated by adapting my initial research proposal, and to look for professional development opportunities to broaden my teaching practices, in particular teaching practices with ICT that are going to prepare my students for their future in our ever-changing society. So using aspects of the flipped classroom model and ICT has inspired my teaching to be present in and aptly named as 21st century teaching. Thank you for listening.